Hello, everyone. Welcome, as always, to another episode of the Flying Changes Mindset and Performance Show, live here today. And I am thrilled to welcome Charlotte Colley this morning. Morning, Charlotte.
Good morning. Lovely to be here.
Thank you very much for coming. Now, some of you may or may not know of Charlotte. She is the quiet one that sits behind everything, because Charlotte is she's the spreadsheet extraordinaire behind Heard It Here Creative, but she's also a photographer, an incredible photographer. I can say that now because we've had our photo shoot, and I can absolutely assure you they are gorgeous. Well, the few of them she sent me out of the billions that we no doubt got over 2 days. Charlotte, tell us just a little bit about what you do in your own words, and how you've come to be sat in my Q&A chair this morning.
Yeah, it's quite a long story, but I'll try and condense it. Okay. I never set out to be a photographer. It's just one of those things that happened. I've got a horsey background, so I did pony club and all those things when I was younger. And there's a chap in my pony club called Miles from Top Shots Photography, who about 11, 12 years ago set up his photography company. And he was friends with me and said, "You're quite techie. You'll probably be able to work a camera. His camera is how to take photos of horses. Come and work for me." And 12 years later, I'm still doing it because I sort of got the bug, and I just couldn't shake it off. And I've always loved, especially capturing action. I love doing dance photography, rugby photography, obviously horses. All things horses, any form of equestrian photography, I absolutely love. And for me, it's all about capturing moments and just freezing those memories in time, whether it's at an event, whether it's a portrait shoot or a commercial photo shoot. It's just being able to see things as they're about to happen and know when to press that shutter. And that's what I really, really love about what I do.
Awesome. And we're going to get on to that later, because that is the skill, the challenge, the mindset of a photographer, isn't it? Is capturing that moment. And you don't necessarily know what that moment's going to be sometimes, either, do you?
Yeah, when it's going to happen.
Yeah, if it's going to happen at all.
Yeah, often catches you by surprise. So yeah, just always being ready with the shutter, just in case.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about some different elements of photography. So we're not really going to talk about, how do you get a good picture, or what is it that you love. I mean, we'll talk about that as well a little bit. What is it you love, obviously, but we thought we'd talk today about a little bit to do with the mindset of the photographer and the challenges that you have behind the lens. So we all see the lovely results and purchase our gorgeous pictures, or have them in portfolio, or whatever it is that we're doing, but I think a lot of the time you are the kind of forgotten hero almost of the event, aren't you? Because if we think about event photography, particularly riding event photography, we all go out and we do our thing, what have you, and then we want that picture to remember it by. And I know I've sat so many times thinking, oh, I'll have a look and see if there's a good picture, and we are so critical of ourselves. Like, what's it like, the flip side of that lens, when you're trying to capture that moment for someone? What's that like?
It's interesting, because luckily I've been on both sides of it. So I've done the sales as well as the photography, and that really, really helps, because learning what the riders want, what you're looking for, helps me when I'm going through those photos, deciding which ones to keep, which ones to not keep, and when I'm waiting to take that image. So dressage is a lot easier because you've got time to choose your moments and choose your angles a bit. So I'll wait. If they're cantering around a 20-meter circle and the rider's putting a bit of a funny face, but then 2 strides later they're a bit more relaxed in the face, that's the shot I'll keep, because I know they'll be happy with that. Jumping, you kind of don't get that choice. If you're on a cross-country jump, it is what it is. You do your best, but generally riders are just happy about the fence being big and looking impressive. But it's something we have to consider. It's not, the horse has to look good and the rider has to be happy with themselves. And it's amazing the things that people pick up on that I didn't even used to see, like the little facial expressions, or, oh, my elbow's at a funny angle, or my toes at a funny angle, and the things that will stop people buying a photo. And it makes me die inside, because I think, oh, but that's an amazing memory of your horse at that event. And I just hope that people might go back one day and get that photo because that event meant something to them, and try and look past the little things that when it's on a 9x6 print, you can't really see anyway.
Yeah, that must be quite difficult to deal with, actually, if you think about it, because you've taken what is a good photo from a photo perspective, you know, and everything's like in focus, you know, like all of that kind of side, and framed nicely, and you know, the horse looks good or whatever. And then someone's going, oh no, I can't do that, I've got two chins, or I'm pulling a funny face, or like you say, my legs in the wrong place, or my arms are too straight, or whatever. And
it's something people just literally saying that photo's like, they're almost straight up saying that's rubbish. And you think, oh gosh, I took that, but okay.
And what have you done over the years to kind of get over that then? Because you've been in it long enough now to grow a little bit of a thick skin there. So what's the kind of things that you hear, and then as a photographer, you kind of like bite your tongue or let go, or you know, deal with?
Yeah, it's often things like, oh, my mouth's open, or oh, I wish he'd pricked his ears, or oh, my double chin. And I just think there's nothing I could do about that. Well, I could theoretically Photoshop those things, but then it's not a real photo. And I get that a lot with like headshot photography. I've done a lot of school photography as well. And teachers are the worst for it. Every single one, without fail, can you Photoshop me? Can you make me look thinner? Can you make me look this? And I just want to say, it doesn't matter. It's you. Please, I'll do my best to make you a flattering photo as possible, but it is you. You know, this is it in the moment. This is an image of you, and if I distort that beyond all reality, then it's not the truth anymore. It's not an accurate portrayal. And now I know there's some people that like that, but I, as a photographer, I like to just capture what's in front of me the best I can and not mess with it too much, because I think authenticity is so important.
And that's definitely one of your values, isn't it? Authenticity. And so how do you find it then, being a values-driven photographer, when actually you are essentially, you're an artist in that you're producing something gorgeous for people, and you understand the lighting and the framing and all, and I know nothing about photography, so I wouldn't have a clue. I do everything on automatic mode. That's it. Like, not a clue. So, but at the same time, you're trying to produce something for someone else that's going to appreciate it. But you still want to, like you say, align with your values, align with what's important to you. How do you manage that balance of what the client wants and what you find right for you as a photographer?
I think the important thing is, if we're talking about things like portrait and commercial photography in particular, is educating potential clients and existing clients about what you do. So if someone turned around to me and said, I want you to do some wedding photos, and I want all of the amazing poses, and it almost to look like fashion photography, I would say, sorry, that's not what I do. And I think it's really important for photographers to know when to say no and say, that's not my bag, that's not my style. There is someone out there who'll do that. There are some photographers I know who are amazing natural light photographers, won't use studio lights, and don't really do any Photoshop. And that's great, because if you want that style, then they're the ones for you. And there's other people who do amazing studio work. There's some people who do amazing Alice getting me to shoot her wedding, because so my sort of style, if I'm doing events at wedding, is more reportage. So I try and be as sneaky as possible and not let people know I'm there. And that for me is the challenge, to capture the moments without people even know I've got them. So when someone goes and goes, oh, I didn't even know you took that photo, that's great, that's a win for me. But there's a photographer out there for everyone. And I think as photographers, we all have come to accept that and just know that you can't please everyone. Stick to your values, your style, and what you're good at, and just find the people that match with that, because there are lots of people out there who want photos and lots of people willing to take those photos. It's just matching us all up with each other.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's absolutely key, isn't it? And I think that's the same with any kind of artist, if you want to call it that. You know, like it's not that their style's no good or wrong, it's just it doesn't match with what you like, and go and find someone that does. I have to say, for my wedding, I definitely wanted the sneakies, because I wanted someone to capture the day and the emotion behind it.
Yeah.
So tell us then a bit about, you know, capturing the emotion and the feeling, because as someone who literally does everything on auto, and mostly on my iPhone, to be fair, as well, I haven't got a clue about how you work out how you capture that essence of like what's really in that photo. But for you then, how do you know when it's a good photo? How do you know when you've captured what you want? And then it's a bonus as well if also that's what the client wants. Fantastic as well, you know.
Sorry, there's different elements to it. So you've got the technical side. So you talk about being on auto, and that's just one element of it. So that's just the camera settings, which, without going into too much detail, that tells the camera sensor how much light it's letting in, the color balance, all those things that make up the technical element of the photo. Then my input, so I could shoot on auto. You know, I could just choose shoot on auto. That's fine. Sometimes I shoot on manual. Sometimes I do shoot on partial auto because I've got other things to worry about. And there's a wonderful photographer. I can't remember which one of them said it. There's Emily Hancock and Hannah Freeland, who are both great photography mentors. And they said something that really I believe in too, about worrying about your settings should not stop you from capturing what's in front of you. Rather shoot on auto and get the timing right and capture that moment that you're talking about than be faffing around the back of your camera and missing the horse and rider having an absolute wonderful interaction that you could have got a beautiful photo of. So it's striking the balance for me between getting my camera to do the technical work, and then my job is looking at the framing, which is the crop and everything that's going on around the photo. I'm always looking at backgrounds and things like, oh, there's that wheelie bin over there, or that ambulance if you're in an event. How can I position myself so that's not distracting in the frame? Or can I get a bit lower to get a different angle? So with dogs, for example, get really low to the ground because their eye line is low. And it's little things like that that all build up to make the picture. And then the last element is when to press the shutter, which is often the hardest thing. And that's something I think is really hard to teach people. With event photography, it's easier because it's jump, horse going over jump, click, click, click. You can teach someone that. The other stuff, the capturing the moments, the emotions and things, it's just time. And I think some people naturally are better at seeing it than others. It's a lot of patience, because I'll be sat there sometimes, and it's probably happened on our shoot, Jenny, where I'd be there just waiting, not taking photos. I'm sure Alice is over my shoulder thinking, is she going to take a photo in a minute? What's she doing? But I'm just waiting for things to happen naturally, especially when you're working with animals or people who aren't models, who aren't used to having a camera in their face going click, 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 click all the time. And you watch any model, they move constantly. So they know to just keep subtly moving every time the camera clicks. But your average person doesn't think like that, and people tend to freeze. So it's about me just letting people be people and horses be horses and dogs be dogs, and just letting things happen naturally. And that takes time, which you don't have at events, unfortunately. But in a portrait shoot or a commercial shoot, if we've got that little bit more time, I'd prefer just to let people relax and let the moments happen. And then you get those intangible things that you can't create.
Yeah, and that, you know, like you say, that's so true. When we did our shoot, I mean, I've done a few bits and pieces because obviously we've done, you know, wedding engagement, all that jazz and brand. But to have you guys there, and actually what was really great was having someone like Alice, who is, you know, her job is to distract you and to make you laugh and to do that. How often do you actually have an assistant like that with you, and how useful is it to have someone who helps to get that moment when actually you're just waiting for it to happen?
Really useful. It depends on the subject and what the shoot's about. But for things like portrait shoots and commercial shoots, there are so many reasons why having someone with you is helpful, from holding a reflector in the right place to positioning the light for you to doing the distracting job. And you can then play off each other a bit, and then it breaks down the wall between you and the client. You've got that other person there, and I find that really helps me. So I'm not having to worry about constantly talking to the subject, because it could be a bit overwhelming if I'm just constantly saying, do this, do that, stand a bit over there. People can shut down because I'm just being bossy and they're not relaxing. Whereas having that extra person to bounce off breaks up the dynamic and makes it a bit more relaxed. And I can then wait for moments to happen between the assistant and the subject, in between some of the more stage shots, and I'll keep shooting and wait for those to happen. So yeah, it's absolutely invaluable having someone you get on well with to work with you to help create those shots. Just makes my life so much easier.
And so we will get on to event photography, because I want to know the mindset behind that, because that's really interesting. But we're talking about portraiture and commercial. So what would make a commercial shoot? What would make a portrait shoot? What's the sort of difference between those two, just so that people kind of understand this as we're talking about it?
So it's all about the end goal for the photos, really. So a commercial shoot, depending on the subject, it could be personal branding, obviously a bit like yours, Jenny, which was more about you and you interacting with your horse and your dog. That would be closer to a portrait shoot, but it's thinking more about how the images are going to be used. So the end goal for a commercial shoot is the images are probably going to be used on a website, social media, advertorial, and you're usually getting a product, some sort of product placement in there, things like making sure your logo and your gilet is visible, for example. Very, very important, because that is part of the brand. That's what we need to showcase. Whereas for a portrait shoot, I'd be looking at the interaction. I'd be looking at the smiles, the happy horse, the happy owner. And at the end of the day, what I want is someone to want to print that image and put it on their wall. And I think I've got one behind me. This is risky because it might not work. Can you see? There he is. Bob up there. It's a bit small. I need to get a bigger canvas. But that's what my end goal is, for people to have something they want to put on their wall. And that's usually them sharing a moment with their animal, or their animal just looking fantastic in an amazing setting and just capturing the essence of that. That one I've got a Bob up there, his eyes just really pop out, and I love looking at that. So that's the more emotive response. I think to portrait photography, you're looking for that emotional hook. Whereas for the commercial photography, you're looking at something that's going to work at the end of the day to sell something, your product, your service, and you create scenes that are going to help facilitate that.
And so when, because we did 2 days the other week of a sort of a branding / commercial shoot. So it had a sort of a dual purpose to it. When you've got that kind of dual purpose, how do you manage the balance of the emotion and the beautiful pictures and things with knowing how it's going to work commercially? Because, well, I mean, I don't know. That's what I was going to ask you, because we've got a whole mix in my bag. I've only seen a few of them so far, because there's billions of them, no doubt. How do you do that? How do you manage the balance of the two?
I think preparation is really helpful with that. So having a shot list of important things that you know you're going to need. So we had a list of shots that we knew we wanted for your social media, for your website. And it's the same with most commercial shoots. And we'll discuss with the client beforehand what's essential. And then you have your nice to haves and your in between stuff that is just an add on to that. And that tends to be the more, those capture the moments in between things and the slightly more emotive things, which tend to happen when you're a bit more relaxed, when you know you've got the important shot that, oh, that's, yes, we've got that. The website header sorted. That image will be perfect for that. And then a few seconds later, you relax, you pat the horse, click, and then that's a really nice, more emotive, natural photo, which again has a purpose, especially for social media. Those kind of images work really well because they've got that emotional hook, which works really well on social media. So for me, it's about knowing I've got in the bag what I need to get in the bag. And I'm, as you know, I'm a planner. So I'll have a list or a spreadsheet, or sometimes it's in my head, sometimes it's written down. Sorry about the dog. Yeah, so I'll just planning beforehand, and then if I've got the preparation right, then I don't have to worry about getting those certain shots, because I've ticked them off, and then I can just let the other ones happen.
We've been joined by your lovely dog there. That's all right. We are used to animals. It's fine. It is what we love. It's not a problem. So, okay. So actually, so as with many, many things in life, then planning and preparation are really key to getting the result that you want. So it's like plan, prep, know what you want, and then actually on the day, go with it, be more relaxed, be more in the moment.
Yeah.
And so is there anything particular that you do to try and make sure you're in the moment, you're not distracted too much, and you can kind of get that moment? Because you've got to have a certain headspace and mindset for you to be able to capture that correctly. Is there anything that you do? Or
I think for me, I tend to visualize in my head where I think the shoot's going to go and what things are going to look like. If I've had a chance to recce at a location beforehand, then I've usually got in my mind where we're going to do things, what order we're going to do things in. And so I know we can just move from place to place and how it's all going to work. Now, sometimes I don't have that luxury. Like I've done a couple of commercial shoots where it's been alongside a video shoot. So I've been the add-on and I've just been following them around. The videographers get their bit, and then I have a couple of minutes to get some shots of that setup, and then we move on. So those are a bit more ad hoc and just have to be really flexible. And the big thing for me is just making sure everything I can control, which is usually my kit myself, is ready to go. I've got backup cars, I've got spare batteries, all that stuff. And I don't have to worry about, oh, I've not got a spare battery. What can I do? I've always got a spare one in the bag and I'm going to get that, keep shooting. I've got a backup card in my camera, which when we come onto events, we'll talk about that being so important, and not worrying about losing images. So I've got everything twice. Things like that will then put my mind at ease so I can concentrate on taking the photos and not worrying about all the other stuff. And knowing my kit, knowing my camera settings, I'd always joke that I could probably take a photo of a horse cantering or jumping with my eyes closed, because I know where all the buttons are on the camera. I can listen to the horse moving, and I just instinctively know because I've just done it so many times. And it's that second nature thing. I think if you're practiced enough at it and it becomes second nature, then it's one less thing to worry about.
So that's really interesting, actually, that because you've done it so much now, you're even tuned in, what we call your unconscious competence now. You know where everything is. You can even get to the point where you can hear the rhythm of the horse, particularly if it's coming to a specific jump or something, and therefore know at what point it's ideally, like when we're riding, really, isn't it? Be able to do things. Yeah. How much do you think it has really helped you as a horse photographer to have ridden and to understand what a horse is likely to do? I mean, obviously, it's always likely, never guaranteed.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, I think it's so important. I'm not to say that there aren't some amazing equestrian photographers who've never ridden. And we had this conversation with someone the other day about a young chap with training up to be a photographer. And he's musical. And when he was being taught to take trot shots and canter shots, he got it so quickly because he understood rhythm. And we're like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense. Because if you can understand rhythm, you'll very quickly learn the way a horse moves, and you'll see that repeated pattern and go, yeah, trot, trot, trot. So that was really interesting, that actually someone who's completely non-horsey could still get it because he could start to understand the way the horses moved and the timing of the movement. But for me, yeah, so helpful being integrated into that system and having done things like Pony Club and understanding the mentality of the sport as well as what makes a horse look good. It's sort of almost second guessing what other things riders might care about. Like a great example is the patty shots that people are after a fence across country at the end of a show jumping round, like the smiling and patting of the neck. As a rider myself, I know that's a great shot to have, because I know how I was feeling in that moment. If I just jumped a clear round at the Pony Club Championships, I'd be elated. And if that was on camera, I 100% would have bought that photo. So little things like that really help. And some of the best photographers I work with are riders and still riding at the moment. There are others who've since given up the riding, like myself, and are just carrying on. But it's our way to stay involved with horses and just seeing those moments. And almost, I find, living a little bit vicariously through the riders. Like there's people I'll see event after event after event, and I'll watch the horses as they come up through the levels. And you get to know people, and it's so nice to see them developing and following their journey. You know, it's not just, for me, it's not just taking photos. I genuinely do care. You know, if there's a little kid who's had a refusal, you know, with it not being an issue, or the judge giving them encouragement and making sure, you know, they're okay, you know, give it another go, kick on, it's fine, change your whip over to the other hand and you'll be okay. You know, I really want them to have a good time too. And if I capture great images, that's great, but I want the riders to enjoy it as much as possible as well.
And, you know, what really hit home then was when you were talking about the patting shot as well, that you capture the emotion in that image. And I think what's definitely coming through today is that it's not just about a picture, is it? It's about, we don't just buy a picture.
No.
We buy the memory that picture is associated with. So what are the ones that people absolutely love then? What are the memories that people really love to capture, that you love to take? I mean, obviously you say the patting one. Are there any others, or what's your favorite memory to capture for someone?
It's not always the victorious ones. Like for some people it is, oh great, you know, we're at the championship, so we've got to have a picture of that. Sometimes there was a great one I took when I was working for Jasmine Punter at Summerford Premier League, I want to say 3 years ago, trying to count the COVID years, in the dressage, and the horse, beautiful horse, a lovely dressage test, the advanced medium, and then fly bucked through the extended canter all the way along the long side. And I kept shooting, so I thought, oh, you know, she might buy it. And she did. And because she'd survived fly bucking, it was spectacular photos. And it for that rider, it was a memory. It was, you know, that happened. And she loved that it had been captured. She laughed it off. It was just one of those things. And it's different for every rider. So our job is just to keep shooting, because you never know what's going to be the meaningful thing. You never know if that's going to be that horse's last event, or if there's something special. And I sometimes, if I know people, I know the horses, I do know, like if it's a significant thing, like they've always had a problem getting through the water and they get through the water, or they've moved up a level and it's their first B100 or something. But you can just never know. And I think that's why it's best for us just to keep shooting and try and get as many good images as we can, because you're never quite sure what it's going to mean to someone.
Yeah, and so we're on event photography now, which is great, because I wanted to get onto that, because there is a whole, like we say, a whole nother mindset. So, but obviously with portraiture or commercial, you get the chance to brief with the client, you know, find out what it is that they want, check in that you're aligned with that, and all that kind of side of things. But event photography, now this is a whole nother ball game. And actually what's really interesting with you as well, Charlotte, is that a lot of photographers will pick a niche and they'll do that. So they will either be an event photographer or a wedding photographer or a commercial photographer. But you actually do a whole mix of them, don't you?
Yeah, and I think you get some people who are the school of thought, like, you must niche. You must just do one thing and that's it. And my argument is, yes, but if I can be good at a few things, why aren't I allowed to be good at a few things? You don't tell an event rider that they should just do dressage.
No, you definitely don't.
Because, but I quite like doing the cross-country show jumping, actually. I mean, you look at Mickey Young doing Grand Prix show jumping, dressage and eventing, you just think, my gosh, like, insane. Now, I'm not saying I'm the Michael Young of photographers in any stretch, but I think it's perfectly possible to be able to do a few things well. And for me, I like the variety. I genuinely love doing all the different things. I absolutely love dance photography. A couple of weeks of each year, barring COVID, I'll be found photographing at dance festivals with young kids who are starting their journey through going up the grades through dance. Because for me, it mirrored dressage a little bit, you know, similar, the timing and things. And it's something different. And it hones your skills as well. If you're doing all these different things, you can learn something in one style of photography that you can carry through to another. So it's always worth trying. Now, at some point, I might eventually niche down further and really focus on something, because I've accumulated so much information and technique, and you think, you know what, I'm just going to focus on this one thing for a bit. But I would always advise people don't niche too soon, because you never know. There might be something you haven't tried yet that might be your thing. You think something's your thing, but just try a few different things and just see what you can learn, because there's so much knowledge out there. There could be a rugby photographer that's given me a great tip, or other dance photographers and things like that, that all the information pools together. And I just think the more I can learn, the better the photographer I can be.
I love that. Okay, so event photography then. This is fascinating. Not from a technical perspective at all, because it's like you said, it's a completely different skill to portraiture or commercial. But what is the mindset of a good event photographer, do you think? Because it is a completely different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I think the most important thing is, now this is something some people have to learn, some people have it naturally, being able to think on your feet and being able to stay calm when you're faced with things going wrong, because things always go wrong. You may not always see it. It's a bit like the duck on the water scenario with the feet paddling like crazy underneath. But quite often, when you're all doing your round and you see your photos an hour later online, great, fantastic. What you don't know is that the generator's shut down, one of the cameras broke, and someone had to run out on course, take a backup camera. All these things happen. They'll always happen, because the amount of moving parts involved, it's inevitable. And lucky for me, I've had a background I've done a lot of team sport and a lot of things when I was at school, like live theatre and stuff, where things used to go wrong all the time. And then I had 3 years as an officer cadet when I was at uni, which really teaches you to deal with terrible situations, things going wrong, planning and preparation, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's what's made my life a lot easier, is just being adaptable, and in the face of everything just going horribly wrong, thinking, okay, what can I do about this? Me panicking will not help the situation. So what are we going to do? And then obviously there's the skill element, which you can teach people, but trying to teach people to not panic in the face of a crisis, things like that, that's really hard with the short time we have to gel as a team and work together. And I think for me, it's the teams that have been working together longest and start to know each other and know each other's strengths and weaknesses. That's when you build that really good base, and you've got a good team who complement each other. As with all things, really, photography, anything, it's working together to make it happen.
And obviously one of the obvious challenges, aside from what you've been talking about there, which is, most people have no idea that so many things go on behind the scenes. And like you, I used to do technical element of theatre productions. People had not a clue what was going on behind the scenes and the show went on.
Yeah. That might fall down. It's fine. Just plug the things round, send someone with a new one. Don't panic. It's all good. They will never know.
Smiling. Just keep smiling. Yeah.
Right away.
And most people don't really notice the photographers, apart from if they're in the way of the jump or something. But, most people don't really notice. Like you say, you're kind of that stealth mode, aren't you? You're there doing an important job, but you don't want to be noticed at the time. It's like the behind the scenes, people in the back t-shirts on the stage, isn't it? It's like they're doing a really important job, but you don't want to know they're there. And that's half the skill of it as well, isn't it? Is doing your thing well, but being out of the way of it. So
that's where knowing horses comes in, actually. Yeah. Being in a show jumping ring and not getting run over, that definitely helps when you've ridden yourself and you go in the jump off, they might go there. I'm just going to go and stand outside the ring because it's risky. So that really helps. And I think you're right, that I don't want the rider to be looking at me and not looking at their jump, and it's interesting. Some riders will trot past me at the start of a show jumping round, for example, and smile, and I'll say good luck, and you can see the riders that want that interaction. And then you've got others who are just so in the zone, and I know to stay completely quiet because they clearly don't want me to talk to them. They don't want to know I'm there, and that's fine. And that comes from having ridden myself and knowing that feeling. I was a really chilled out rider. I'd be like having a laugh and a joke and whatever with them. But I know there are some people who, and I think we've spoken about this in some of your previous lives with other riders about competitions, some people need to be that focused and they don't want to know anything else that's going on outside what they're doing right now.
And so, I mean, do you ever get that rider that says, "Don't take any photos of me," or "Don't click near me," and you just go, "Okay, no problem." Do you still do it? Do you still take a few candid ones in case they want it, or do you do as you're told and get completely?
I usually talk to the judge. So, especially at affiliated competition, and this is something I try and do beforehand, check with the judge, because things like dressage, I've had BD judges turn around to me saying, "No, you need to click for that horse like you've done for every other horse. Otherwise, it's not fair. It's not a level playing field." If they've come and said, "Don't take a photo of me," and so I'm sat there silently, they're not getting the same environment to ride in. So what I would do in that instance is I take photos of the floor at the same time I would have been taking photos of the rider, so they get the noise, but they don't get the actual photos of them. So because they expressly asked not to have a photo of them taken, which is fine. It might be for GDPR reasons. There might be privacy concerns. You never know. But to level the playing field, the noise was still there for all the horses. So, and it's difficult because, like you say, you get some people who say it, like, did they really mean it though? I've had ones where the pony allegedly has been scared of the camera. I've never known a horse that has come into a ring and genuinely been scared of a camera or a photographer. But the parent had got it in their head that that was an issue for the child and the pony. So I have no choice but to just step out of the way, because I don't want to be blamed if something does happen and they're convinced it was because they were spooking at me. So it's towing the line, and I think at different levels of competition it's different, which is why I think just talking to the judge and being sure really helps, because I know at higher level competition, affiliated competition, it's more about them having the same environment. And you get, pro riders, you get to a certain level, you're going to be photographed. There'll be press photography, multiple press photographers there, event photographers there. It's just going to happen. And I think it's a condition on most entry forms where you agree to be photographed. So unless you expressly tell the secretary, "No, I don't want my photos taken," and then they will pass that on to us, that we don't know any different.
Yeah. Now it's really interesting, that, isn't it? Because I mean, I've been at, I used to run regionals and things, and been at BD regionals and stuff behind, as part of the team doing it, not necessarily as a rider. And people have gotten annoyed because the cameraman's in the wrong place or something. It's like, well, they've been there for all of those tests. We can't suddenly now not have them there for you. That's not fair. So yeah, it's something that people don't really think about as well. The other element that I think is fascinating about events photography is this mindset of you've got one shot. It's particularly with cross country, over in a blink of an eye. How do you deal with the stress and the pressure, more so at, like you say, jumping events and things like that, as opposed to necessarily the dressage? How do you deal with the pressure of getting the shot?
I think it's over the course of a number of years, it's learning to understand that you will not get it 100% of the time, and just come in terms of that. Things happen. Cameras freeze up and do weird things. The rain comes down at the wrong time and your lens stops working. Stuff does happen. But we've always got a contingency. There's usually three cross-country photographers. So you just have to bank on the fact that the other photographers have got a good shot of that horse. Because if you get too hung up on the fact that you missed number 52 over your fence, you're then not focusing for the next 10 riders, and you're not going to be getting the best shots of them, and it's a knock-on effect. So unfortunately, it does happen, and we hate it when it happens, and we're really sorry for the riders if we, for whatever reason, we don't get the shot. But that's the nature of event photography. Unfortunately, you cannot guarantee it's all going to go perfectly. All we can do is do our best, and then just keep doing our best throughout the day. And if a mistake happens, we learn from it. And I mentioned before about backup cards, for example, which is a real big one for me. As you probably know, with event photography, the cards are collected throughout the day, get loaded on computer, and then they go back into circulation. And what usually happens is the photographer then gets a new card in the camera, formats it, starts shooting again. And sometimes it does happen that somehow the wrong card came back, it hadn't seen the computer, the photos get deleted. Now, I always have a backup card, and most of the people I work with have a backup card. And if I'm working with someone that doesn't, I will badger them until they get a backup card, because then you've got the whole day's photos there, all saved. So if one of the other cards does go missing or gets corrupt or get accidentally deleted, you've got that contingency plan. And that, for me, takes so much of the stress out of it, because you go, it's fine, I've got those photos. We haven't lost 10 riders jumping that amazing massive Trakehner. I've got a backup. It's fine.
And so it's this kind of preparation, isn't it, that helps with performance. There's so many. It's really interesting. There are so many things that you're talking about here that we talk about in riding performance, that actually, when it comes to photography performance, getting that great shot, and having whatever performance is, it's about the winning shot is the one that people want. They want to ideally buy, especially if it's a business, but that captures that moment. And there's so much similarity between the rider mindset, the sports person mindset, and the photographer mindset, which I have to say I had no idea was the case at all. So because I know you've watched a lot of my stuff, obviously I work with you guys, what would you say are some of the sort of the similarities that you've definitely noticed between getting a great shot and the mindset of riding, and obviously being a rider yourself? What are the kind of things like, flow or clearing your mind or any of that stuff? What are the similar kind of things that you find as a photographer that you find really helpful to bring into your photography?
I think definitely visualization. So, especially for more controlled shoots like portrait commercial, seeing it happen and visualizing how you're going to make it happen. But also for the more ad hoc things, having plan A, B, C, D, and having worked through them, thought ahead and gone, well, all these things could go wrong, but this is how I'm going to mitigate them. And having that flexible mindset of, well, I'm going to bounce to plan B then, or plan C. It's fine. And I'm a pretty laid back person, and I literally just go with the flow. I know some people aren't like that and don't think like that, but for me, that's what helps me to do that job I do, is to just keep going with what's in front of me and not stressing if things don't go exactly to the plan. I love a plan, but I'm always planning for 20 million different possibilities and not having a meltdown if it doesn't go exactly how I planned it. Because I know if I try and micromanage things too much, it hampers the creativity. And I think it's the same with, well, it's like when you're riding, because you're working with a horse and you cannot tell the horse what your plan is and that he's got to do exactly this thing at this time, because they don't. It's just, that's how they are. They've got their own mind. And it's a little bit like that with the photography. There's another element there that you're never going to be able to control. So you just have to work with what's in front of you.
Yeah, and especially in what you do where you've got animals. So I know you did a gorgeous puppy shoot the other day. It must have been great. But I mean, that must just be like, you can't set it up that much, surely, because the little whatsits don't do what you want. Horses, dogs, animals, even people don't always do what you want. And then we add in the element of the weather as well. How do you deal with the weather?
Well, we get,
especially at our photo shoot, you do as much indoors as you could, I think. But
we're a bit like farmers, so we complain when it's too sunny, we complain when it's too rainy. So for a photographer, the weather we really, really want is light cloud. No wind, no rain, no strong sun, because strong sun equals shadows, which is bad. We just want nice, lightly cloudy days. Now, let's be honest, we never get that. Well, we very rarely get exactly what we want. Like the other day, I was at an event, it was like it is today, blazing sunshine, horrible shadows. So we then have to keep moving around the jump to try and not be shooting into the sun. And there's all those other factors, and you just have to do your best with what you've got. Obviously, rain is a nightmare. We've all got these ugly plastic covers that go on our cameras that make it really hard to see through your viewfinder. So you've got no idea what you're shooting half the time, but you just frame it up and do the best you can and try not to let your camera get drowned, because that's our worst nightmare. And it just comes down to having all eventualities. The boot of my car is just full of sun cream, hats, woolly hats, waterproof hats, wellies, waterproof coat, everything, towels, the works, a full spare set of clothes that just lives in there, because you never know. The wonderful British
and again,
weather.
that's like being a horse rider, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Just have everything, because you just don't know. Except your car's going to be messy, and live with it, and just have everything. I'd rather have everything in there and it be a bit messy than clean my car and go, oh, well, now I haven't got my cap and my sun cream and I got sunburn, and be really sad.
I literally did that the other day. As you know, I got my new car. It was lovely and it all looks gorgeous and everything. And I took all the stuff out of my old car and I thought, oh, I don't need that in there, and I don't need that in there. And then I was driving someone the other day and I thought, I don't have a waterproof coat with me. Why did I take that out? And that's so unlike me to have done that. So the first thing that went straight back in, I've got gorgeous boot bags now as well. They're amazing. So they go in the boot of your bag, boot of your car, and they hold loads of those stuff, and they all zip up, and they're all branded and gorgeous. I highly recommend them to you. I'll show you mine at some point. Right. Okay. So anyway, we're on to how to organise the boot of your car now, which is kind of slightly off track. I've got a couple of questions that I did really want to ask you. And actually, Alice has asked one that I wanted to ask you, but I wanted to get to the right point in which to do it, which is, I'm always saying to people, get rid of the videos and the photographs of the falls, because what happens is they keep it in your memory, they keep it in your mind. It's not a good idea. You actually help strengthen the neural pathways. But as you were saying with Jasmine's horse, when she was bucking along that test and you took the photos and she did buy them, people actually do buy them. So how do you deal with that when you capture an incident or a fall? How do you deal with whether or not you ought to put that up available to buy? You know, that sort of element of it, especially now having, you know, been around me and hearing all the things that I say about it and things. Has that made a difference, or do you just ignore that and carry on anyway?
This is a question. So I'm in a few photography groups, as you can imagine how fun they are. This is a question that came up recently, actually, about, do you delete the full photos? Now, having been in this situation before, and a lot of other photographers I know have also, we keep them initially, because sometimes a vet or doctor could really benefit from those photos. We can capture split seconds in the moment a horse or rider hits the floor. Not always very nice to look at, but it could be life-saving, because they can see something, see the way the rider or the horse has landed, that can inform them on their treatment of that individual. But what we probably will then do is not put them online, and we'll put them in another folder away. And then if the rider then comes back and asks to see it, we can make them available. But I personally haven't had it, but I know the photographers had, where they've been burned in the past. They put photos out there and then got a slap on the wrist from a pony club district commissioner, who said, you know, why have you put the photos of that child having that horrible fall online in? You know, it's not the done thing. Why would you do that? So it's okay. It depends on the situation. If someone's been hurt, the horse or rider's been hurt, then generally no, because why would you want to put that out there? Press photographers is a whole different kettle of fish. I mean, we've all seen the photos of the top riders having these horrible crashing falls that end up, especially if it's someone like Zara, splashed on the Daily Mail. But they've got a different purpose. They're there to document, and unfortunately, as with the other all sports things like F1 crashes, it's the same thing. That sells because it's the drama. But I think,
yeah, and it's a bit like the football the other day, isn't it? Where the BBC got told off for filming, you know, the guy having the heart attack. But it's news.
It's really hard. So I think for us, keeping them on the off chance that they're useful for a technical reason, but, you know, use our judgment about putting them online. Sometimes it's things like when people end up hanging around the horse's neck and then landing on their feet. That, you know, fairly inoffensive. So it's just about making their judgment call. And if you're not sure, err on the side of don't put it up. And if the rider emails going, I really, really want to see the photo of me falling off. Yeah, okay, then if you really want to, we can put them online for you. But let them make that call. And I think that sort of ties in what you recommend. You know, if they really, really, really want to see it, or even just want to see it once, we can show them. But if they've thought about it and gone, you know what, I don't want to relive that, then fine. They don't have to. We're not going to shove it out there for them to have to look at.
And I think it's really important, though, that you guys as photographers understand the reason why it's not a good idea. Because I think a lot of people don't realise just how much a video or a photo actually gets literally captured in our brain. And the more we look at it, the easier it is for our brain to recall that moment. And just knowing that little bit of information would be really helpful for a photographer or videographer to know why perhaps it's not a good idea to have it so readily available. But if someone really wants it, then that's their choice. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of just quick questions to finish off with for you then. Who's your hero in sports photography and why?
Ooh, I think probably for me, it's Nico Morgan, who, if you're an equestrian, you've probably seen a lot of his work in Horse and Hound. He's based not far from me, actually, in Rutland. It just happens to be a photographer I followed for a very long time and does a lot of equestrian sport, has written some really helpful blogs on the subject. And when I was first starting out, I would look at his work and think, okay, well, that's what I need to aspire to. So that's someone who's really inspired me and really helped me along my photographing journey, really.
Cool. Okay. Never heard of him, but I'm sure I'd probably, like you say, you'd know the photos when you see them.
Yeah.
And then if you could shoot any sports, what would it be and why?
Ooh. What haven't I shot? I think things like gymnastics at the high level, like the rhythmic gymnastics, which is similar to dance, which I really enjoy, or figure skating. Anything where people do routines and make amazing shapes and do amazing leaps, and you try and capture them at the point of the jump or the amazing movement. That kind of stuff I absolutely love. It's a real challenge, but that's what makes it fun.
Awesome. So it sounds to me, Len, that the things that you absolutely love are capturing that split-second moment of movement, or emotion, and or both, ideally.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's what for me is the challenge and the joy, because the feeling you get when it pans out and you nail it is amazing.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I can't wait to see some more photos coming out. And the guys, anyone who sees these beautiful, not the ones that I take for selfie of myself, gorgeous photos coming out on my social media now, it's from these guys. And it was Charlotte behind the lens and Alice, no doubt, waving something around to make me, the dog, the horse, or someone look at her or laugh. Particularly if you don't, if you're not that confident, or you don't particularly like, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of my smile, and people like getting me to actually smile in a genuine way. It looks fine when I'm smiling. It's like, that's your smile, but I'm like, oh, it's all teeth, I don't like it, and so having someone say something and you laugh, and then you get the photo and you look at the photo and you go, oh, okay, actually, yeah, you can see that I was enjoying myself. I get that now. So I think it's so important that you get the right photographer, you get the right team around that photographer, and if you want to really capture that moment, that you're aware that there's a lot more goes into it than just pointing a camera.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte. If people want to get hold of you, or they want to find out about where you are next, or maybe, book you for some photography or anything, how do they do that?
So for equestrian work and canine work, I'm Charlotte Colley Creative on all of the socials. And then for the commercial stuff, it's Heard It Here Creative, which is where you'll find me and Alice doing our tag team spiel. So Charlotte Colley Creative or Heard It Here Creative. And if you message one about the other thing, I can cross you over. It's fine. Yeah, just contact me one way or the other.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte. It's been absolutely fascinating hearing about the other side of the lens and some of the things that we don't normally think about or involved in photography. We think you just stand there and take pictures, but we know you're real people now. We know. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing more of your work as time goes by.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me on, Jenny.
Bye.